Hello and welcome back to the web development course. So in this tutorial, we aim to review the application of HTML heading tags. So the topics I'm going to be discussing here are the application, how to apply heading tags in a HTML page, but we'll also discuss semantics and SEO properties. So how heading tags can affect these type of properties. And also we'll be discussing a little bit about accessibility and best practices when utilizing heading tags. So to create a heading element, it's very simple. We have 6 options available from H1 to H6. So H1, this is an example of H1, and then we have H6. So that's the last one. And of course, we've got all the others in between, H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there is a common misconception that these represent different sizes. Now, if I were to type in some text here, how that might come about is because you'll see that the H1 produces a bigger or a larger font than the H6 does. So go back into here, you can see that we've got a larger for the H1 and the H6 is smaller. So it's important to understand that although by default the browser will display H1 larger, the text larger than H6, for example, it doesn't represent a size. It simply represents 6 levels of headings. So let's think of an application of where headings might be used. So we could have a H1 heading, main, and then, for example, a H2 heading is the subheading. And then we use the P tags for text to show that we've got a paragraph of text. So that would be a good example of using heading tags. So when you are developing, try and always plan your work so that H1 is the main heading and then H2 is the subheading and so on. Try and avoid utilizing heading tags that don't flow naturally from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So you want to try and kind of avoid this type of format here where you skip heading H1 numbers. So why is that? Well, you got to understand potentially what your web page, what your code is going to be used for. Now, there might be some sort of user agent, for example, Google, who will scan your page and extract information from it in order to provide other users information about that page. For example, a search engine, you get a small snippet of information about the link that you're about to click. Now, there are many different types of, we can describe as user agents out there, other pieces of software that might use information on your page. And you want to be able to give them information in a way that makes it easy for them to understand the page. So here, for example, if we had H1 and then a H4, it doesn't necessarily logically flow. So there may be questions over whether this is related. So by having H1 and then H2, you can see that there's a flow here in your work, in that we've got the main heading and then H2, we've got the subheading. It's in some sort of logical order. So the general message then is to avoid skipping heading levels if you can. So another practice which can be considered good practice is that you want to try and potentially make sure, or where you possibly can, only have one H1 heading on the page. Now that isn't always going to be possible potentially on all pages, but using more than one won't result in an error, but it might make more logical sense to have only one H1 tag on the page, because one page normally represents one thing, one item, or one subject matter. So where possible, try and keep the H1 tag to the main heading of the page. Another instance where this might be useful, having one heading, H1 tag, for the main heading, is when we start talking and thinking about accessibility. Because when we develop for the web, we need to think about accessibility, and in particular, probably the screen readers that people who are hard of sight or are blind might use to access your web page. So a screen reader, a piece of software that's going to read out what's on the page to its user, is going to use these tags, all of our elements, to go through the page logically and to provide information in a logical way to the user. Now, if a screen reader was able to see this here, it can look at the H1 tag and it gives it some information. It then has some sort of semantic meaning here, because the H1 tag, the software can be programmed to know that that is the main heading of the page or an important heading of the page. So therefore, it can tell the user or identify that maybe as the first thing that gets read out to the user, which kind of makes logical sense. Someone goes to a page, they're using a screen reader, they want to know what's on that page, and therefore the heading tag or the H1 tag should have the main heading for that page, which describes what's on that page potentially. And that would be another reason, having a screen reader go through the page, why you want to keep your H1, so your heading tags, in a logical order. Because the screen reader might look for H1 headings and then naturally look for H2 headings and then so on. And that way, if you think about the most important thing is in H1, the next most important thing is in H2 and so on. So the screen reader would read the page in that manner. It would read first the most important and then the second most important and then so on. So think of these H tags or heading tags, as structure elements on the page that will help not only structure the page in terms of where headings are, but it will also help in terms of accessibility. Okay, so hopefully that's helped out to give you a better understanding of H1, or I keep saying H1, heading tags, We've discussed a few things here. The application of it was very simple, really. It's an opening closing tag and how they should be ideally used, so in numerical order. And then we discussed a little bit about semantics and how this could be useful for agents, for example, Google, to understand what's on your page. So it gives you a better search engine rank because it's able to identify what's on the page more effectively through your headings. And then we've also discussed accessibility. Again, making sure that your heading tags are in a logical order, which potentially allows screen readers to be able to segment and structure your code and output audio in a logical manner to the user. So that is a review of the HTML heading tags. We have heading tags, H1 to H6. We try and utilize them in a logical way, H1 to H6, so that maybe it improves the semantics or the search engine optimization, and also allows for better accessibility in terms of how screen readers can read the page and output important information first.